Hello, happy Saturday. I see we've got Tim from Victoria, Australia in the house. Thank you for being here. And Risa and Joy and Kevin and Bill. Great to have you all here waiting. I love it. All right, so today our topic is building a lasting author brand in the age of AI. If you're feeling lost in the sea of aspiring authors, you're not alone. And publishing is more crowded than ever. So standing out feels challenging for sure. If you're feeling challenged, definitely let me know in the comments. And even specifically, what are you feeling challenged about? Love to chat about this. But standing out is possible. And it also is a powerful, I don't necessarily think of it as a strategy, but it kind of is a strategy. But it's not something that will happen overnight. It is something that does take time and effort to build your lasting author brand. And as a side note, a brand is something that allows you to grow, expand, and pivot. So don't be too nervous about building a brand in a niche. I'm going to tell you a little story that some of you who've been around, some of my YouTube besties like Kevin Hall and Bill Miller, you may know this story. But I'm going to tell you a little story about how I started Book Launchers and how my brand before that was the reason I was able to successfully get Book Launchers off the ground. And so, building a brand of any kind with any audience can make the difference in whatever it is that you choose to do in the future. But if you build a lasting author brand, it will magnetize readers to your unique story, your voice, and you'll be set up to have impact and again, make an income. And so that's what we're going to dig into today. So this isn't going to be, okay, get on your favorite social media and post 10 times a day, or once a day. And here's what you need to post. That's not what we're going to cover today. We're going to be talking more of the kind of macro level of what you need to think about when you're building this author brand and how you're going to stand out from the AI generated content. Because even as I say all this, I also will be excited to tell you about Author Launch Kit, which if you don't have it, I recommend you get it. Funny story on Author Launch Kit. We announced the price increase. We were ready to raise the price from the launch price at the end of July. And then because here's me thinking it's just going to be a matter of going in the system and changing the pricing, but it had been hard coded in. And so we've had to change all this coding to be able to actually make the price something that can be changed. Things that we have learned in our building of software and things that to me are kind of obvious and natural that the developers that we work with, they just build exactly what we tell them to build. And so if we don't think about things like that, all that's to say the launch price is still there. It is supposed to be fixed. It was supposed to be fixed as of yesterday, but the launch price is still there. So if you haven't got Author Launch Kit yet, you can still get it at the launch price. But all that's to say in Author Launch Kit, one of the big tools we've built in is the ability to, schedule, what's your social media calendar schedule look like based on your readers and your goals, but also it creates AI generated content. So this is not me saying don't use AI because I'm using AI every day. It is me saying AI is doing all of this. So how do you make sure that people are connecting with you, the voice, the person, the brand behind it, right? And for anybody who is new here, I am Julie the Book Broad. I am the founder of Book Launchers and of course your main host here at booklaunchers.tv. But my team has been phenomenal lately and has been stepping up and has been doing so much more content for you over here. So not just me at booklaunchers.tv. And normally, just as an FYI, our lives are every other Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. But for the month of August, I'm in a YouTube group with my YouTube account manager, and they challenged a bunch of us to go live 10 times in August. Now, funny enough, in this group I'm in, some people are already going live 10 times. For us, that was a big stretch because we usually only go live 2 or 3 times a month. So that's what we've been doing. I don't know if we'll keep doing this all the time. So I am curious what you think of all of our extra live streams that we've been doing. Let me know in the comments whether you're watching the replay or right now, if you like all the extra live streams or if we should just stick with every other Tuesday, or maybe we should just make Tuesday our live stream day and Friday our pre-recorded edited content. So I'm curious. All right. So in today's crowded publishing world, the book is not the product per se. Really, you are. Because think about it, when there's, I don't know how many thousand leadership books out there. Why is your book the book that people should choose? And it was interesting because I was just at an event for entrepreneur organization. I'm part of the regional people that are doing things for this organization. And one of our regional director, kind of the main person, we're all volunteers, by the way, but he is in the hospitality space. So he has festivals and some other big events. And so he was talking about one of the books that he's given all of us to read, Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. And he was saying how he knows Will's in his industry, and he personally knows Will. And he said, I wasn't going to read the book because I kind of thought there's going to be nothing new in it, but I started flipping through it and I went, wow, this is amazing. And I thought, geez, how hard is it to sell a book when your friend who is in the industry almost doesn't even read your book? And so I think it's really important, but he did read it because of who Will is. That's why he picked it up and started flipping through it. And then he actually got sucked in, and to the point where he's now bought copies for everybody in the regional roles for us to read and adopt into what we're doing. So that comes down to the who, not the what the book is, but the who has written the book. And so a strong author brand builds trust, authority, emotional connection. It's going to make you memorable, and it's going to make you referable. Ultimately, though, the key part of this story isn't that he told us about the book because Will's his friend. He told us about the book because he read it and was wowed, right? So this is where I keep talking about a good book is not enough, right? It has to be a great book for it to do great things, because readers aren't just buying books, they're following people they trust. And that trust, turns into email subscribers, people showing up on a Saturday for a live stream, or a Sunday if you're in Australia, event attendees, paying clients. But it starts with that connection and may turn into a book sale, but that book sale is just going to drop dead. It's not going to go anywhere else for you if that book isn't fantastic. And so Brene Brown, I think, is a perfect example of this. Maybe not a perfect example. She's a good example of this. You go back 2010, her TEDx talk on vulnerability went viral. And yes, it had good research, but I think it went viral because of how authentically she delivered it, right? The human behind the message was what people really connected with. And then when you pair that with, her honest human brand, when she launched Daring Greatly, it went to bestseller status. And it's just, her name has just grown and grown and grown from there. And I think, again, it's that personal brand that she built connected with her really, really great book and the message. And then that's what grows from there. So it does take planning and execution, and it does take having a great book. It is not a business card, right? I have talked about this so many times where people are like, I just need a book that's a business card. Like, no, a business card book is not going to do what you want it to do today, because AI can write a business card book. You need to write a great book that is going to connect with people so that when they read it, they're telling everyone, or even better, buying copies for everyone in their company, their region, their group, their association, because that's how you're going to have lasting impact and income. I got a couple more examples before I kind of dive into my 5 points, but I just wanted to see what you guys are talking about, because I could see all these things going on in the comments, and I feel left out over here. So, all right, so let's see. Efren's in the house too. Debbie Dosen, welcome. So great to see you here. K Stamp Publishing, great to have you here, Kelly. All right, and then some people are connecting. It's 5 a.m. in Australia. Timothy, I love it. Thanks for being here. Waking up, and I don't know if you're a coffee drinker, but I would definitely be drinking coffee at 5 a.m. Okay, and then I see a question. How many of you authors use direct sales instead of just Amazon and Ingram Spark? So you can go ahead and ask any questions, and I will flag them as I see them, and we will do Q&A at the end, of course. So, all right. So another example, and I am Sorry, I didn't get my breakdown of last week from the Alex Hermosi event. Thank you to everyone who emailed your concern. I really, really appreciate it. And sorry, I will be doing a full breakdown video. I'm not going to do it live. I'm just going to, record one and edit it and send you a really nice polished version of the Alex Hermosi launch. But as I think many of you may have saw, we ended up having a bit of a medical emergency. Everything is okay. But Alex is a really powerful case study. And I think that as much as some people really, don't like his style, and that's totally fine, what I think is important to note is that for this launch to have been a multi-million-dollar launch, selling, I don't even know what the final count of books was, like over 70,000 books, I believe, was the last number I saw. For that to happen, it took years, right? This was not a marketer deciding they're going to do a book launch and marketing it for 3 months and it going crazy. This was a multi-year plan to lead up to this particular launch. And it was this person, Alex and Layla, building this massive brand for themselves, right? And he actually broke down some of this stuff in the live. But if you think about it, this is, and I don't know the exact years, but let's say it's 6 years in the making. and really this launch was at least 2 years in the making, because he knew this book was done 2 years ago. And then he spent the next 2 years building up to this launch. So how many people sit there and look at a launch and go, I want to have a launch just like that, but they have not invested the time, effort, or energy to build the brand and the audience and really the clarity of messaging around it to actually get there. Because I hear that all the time. People come to us and they're like, okay, I want to have a launch just like so-and-so. And I'm like, great. Have you been speaking on stages for 10 years? Because that person has. Have you done 100 podcast interviews in the last 2 months? Because that person did. I think a lot of people miss all the work that goes into creating these massive, massive success stories. And I think that's the kind of the foundation to lay here, is to understand that this isn't an overnight thing, but building a brand is how you create lasting impact. And my story of why I'm so passionate about a strong brand, and a strong brand to me doesn't mean you have a million people paying attention. It does mean you have a good core group of engaged people who are, supporting you, but also, really connecting inside of your community or whatever it is that you have built. But for me, when I launched Book Launchers, and it's just over 8 years now, we've just finished kind of celebrating our 8-year anniversary. And this is what I do like Facebook for. I'm not a big Facebook person, but Facebook showed me the picture from the very first live conference that we did. My son is just a little baby. He's like 7 months old. And he's at this conference, and I'm posting this picture saying, my booth's going to be the busiest because I have this cute baby to draw people in. But that was our first kind of event selling to strangers. And, that we actually have one client that signed on from us from that event that's still working with us to this day. We signed, I think, 5 or 6 people at that conference. But Book Launchers, when I launched it, I had to do it in this weird way because I was using it to get a visa to move from Canada to the United States. And so I had to spend a lot of money and do a lot of things before I was actually allowed to generate money to get the visa. It's really a backwards way of doing things. And so once I finally got to the States, then I could actually sell services. And at that time, nobody knew who I was, right? I was a Canadian who had been in the real estate investing space. And here I was suddenly putting up my shingle in Los Angeles, California, going, okay, I have a self-publishing services company who wants to write a book. And so what I did was I emailed everybody who knew me from the real estate space. So all of my past real estate investing coaching clients are investors. And I said, hey, listen, I'm going to take 10 beta clients for this new business. I'm going to charge you, but it's going to be a lot less than what you would pay if you were to hire me after we're done this beta. And I had 10 people sign up from that initial email. And that is not based on me being, the all-knowing publishing expert. That is based on them knowing me as somebody who does what she says she's going to do, and, trusting that if I tell you this is what I'm building, I'm going to build it and, take your feedback and learn, but also give you what I'm promising you will be given. And fun fact, one of those beta clients, one of those 10 is still with us to this day. She's still working with us right now. So, I guess that's also a warning, once you're in the family, we keep you around. But that is because of my brand. It's not because I had all this track record. So your brand, even if you're in a niche today, having a brand and connecting with people, if that builds trust, that know, like, and trust thing, then you can use your brand to set out and do whatever it is you want to do. So I think that's really, really important to know. All right, so how do you do that? Well, number one is, I believe very firmly, especially now more than ever, is lead with connection. This is not about perfection. Now, it's also not about showing up as a hot mess, but I think that being human is a little messy. And so I think it's okay to share a bit of that mess when it's, being real. So mess doesn't mean chaotic sharing everything and random stuff, right? It is just being real, and share what's hard. So I guess, the example that comes to mind for me at the moment is from last weekend. Like I had planned, I was sitting there with some of you watching the, sorry, I got distracted by comments. I started to read what you guys are writing. So thank you, Darla. I appreciate your input. That live Tuesday video on Friday, that's kind of where I'm leaning to. So the example comes from last weekend, which was when I was supposed to be live for the Alex Hormozi recap after his event kept going for 6 hours. So it wouldn't have been after his, it would have been during it. But the original plan was to go live and, the medical emergency. It would have been easy to just say it was a medical emergency, but I did share a few details in our newsletter. And I'll tell you, that was the most response I've ever had to a single newsletter. I had so many people write in, which, is really kind. And I appreciate that people care so much. But, my husband had a little bit of a heart scare. He had been at the gym and his heart rate went up and up and up, and it didn't come down. So it was over 200 beats per minute for more than 45 minutes. When my son finally called me and was like, something's wrong with dad, I rushed over there and, took one look at him drenched in sweat and yet freezing to the touch, and looked at his heart rate, his Apple Watch showing his heart rate at 210 and 209 and 208. And I was like, we're taking you to the ER. So that, thankfully, he's okay. They were able to reset his heart pretty fast, and he'll work with a cardiologist now. But it's one of those things, we're sharing a few details about what was going on. A lot of people really connected, and I got some beautiful messages afterwards. And it's real life, right? It's real life. And I think that you don't have to let people in on everything that's going on, but letting them see some of the good and some of the challenges, I think, really helps with that connection piece, because people, we're all humans and we're all dealing with so much more than we ever share with the majority of people. But also it gives people a chance to show they care, because they do. Right. I've said this so many times, when we've talked about the trolls and all these things, yes, there are the occasional people that will do mean things, and, they'll say mean things and all those things. Can we do any more things? But the vast majority of people are supportive, caring, and they're in your community because they're interested and engaged in what you're sharing. So, all right. Number 2, be clear about who you are and who you are there to serve and support. And I think being clear is more important than being clever. You're going to see some videos go viral and they're clever, right? That's typically what we're seeing in the viral video space, clever videos. But if you're clear on your messaging and you're clear on how you're helping people, you're going to cut through the noise. And it's important, I think, not just a good idea, but I think it's important to be repetitive and always have that message of what you stand for that comes through in what you're doing. Readers need to know exactly what you're about and why you're for them or why you're not, right? This is another thing, just going back to the Alex Hormozi example. Alex is not for everyone. And I think that's part of the power of his brand, is he's made it very clear about who he's for and who he's not. And the strongest brands are like that. They're a little bit polarizing, to the point where some people will react very strongly against or for something or someone. Mel Robbins is a pretty good example that everybody probably knows this name right now. She's a motivational speaker. I believe she's a former lawyer. I don't know why I'm not sure about that right now, but I think she's a former lawyer. She breaks down mental blocks with science-backed, relatable strategies. And I think that, her audience to me is high achieving professionals who, while they're high achieving, they suffer from procrastination, burnout, and self-doubt. This is this is relatable for the majority of authors that I know. At some point, they suffer from procrastination, some level of burnout or self-doubt. I've shared that every one of my books that I've ever written, there comes a point where I hate it. Usually it's after the second or third round of editing. I go from the point where I think my book is going to be great and help so many people to being ready to completely trash it. So enter the self-doubt / kind of burnout phase of my own author journey. I've yet to have a book where I don't experience that sort of a feeling. So high achieving professionals who are stuck in some level of those things, I think that's who she's talking to. But her message, again, how I interpret this is you're one decision away from a different life. And I think that a lot of the content that she puts out on her podcast, in the book, if you see her speak, it all kind of comes back to that one core thread. And so, while she will be in front of a lot of different people, her brand expands because she's consistently sharing that message that resonates with this kind of audience. So you guys can take a minute to think about this. And if you haven't defined it before, it's a great opportunity to just take a minute and define it. Just, go, I help, put your reader in there who put their pain point that you're talking to achieve a result or transformation or something through, your story, your unique approach, your 5-step method, whatever it is that you have. So, I should have wrote this down for myself, but let's see. I help, new self-publishing nonfiction authors who feel overwhelmed to create a hashtag no boring book that builds their brand and their business without getting burned or burnt out in the process, just kind of making it up. So just take a minute or type it in the comments. I'd love to read what some of you guys are working on. So I help, fill in the blank of specific reader who has, whatever their challenge is to, the result or transformation that you offer through whatever it is your approach. So in my case, my approach is the hashtag no boring books approach. So let me see what you guys have got. All right, I see Daniel's here. Welcome, Daniel. And thanks, Efren. Yep, I'm glad he's stable too. Appreciate that. All right, let's see what else is going on. I'm just waiting to see if anybody has any brand statements. I don't want it to be silent, so I'm just going to keep talking for a second and see if more pop up. See if you guys are working on it. Oh, Joy, I'm so glad. Joy just said her book is now on Amazon. Congratulations. That's fantastic. All right. And Efren said he found my unique style that works beyond no boring books. Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, I will carry on. You guys can work on that. So number 3 is, and this is a little bit, I don't know if it's different, but I think you want to speak to one person. And this is why I think it's so important to really identify your reader. And this is kind of going back to the point of you don't need a massive following. You need a clear one. And you also want to picture somebody when you're talking or writing or those kind of things. So, when people feel seen and heard, they connect. And I think that's really, really important. In my very first book, More Than Cash Flow, I had, and I don't remember if it was in the introduction or in the first chapter, but I basically said that there are days where I think a job at Starbucks would be a better way to go. And I had so many, it actually really surprised me how many other real estate investors said, oh my gosh, I thought that too. And so it was really interesting because, when you share something and you're sharing really for one person, then you start to connect. And when you share those kind of emotional feelings versus, going, hey guys, This is something I saw one of my friends who teaches kind of social media video strategy. She always berates people for getting on social media and going, "Hey guys, just popping in here." She always makes not, she kind of does make fun of it actually, but she challenges people who are going to post videos on their social to think of one person and shoot the video as though it was for one person. So in my case, if I am live today, I'm really just going to be, "Hey, Bill, this is for you," kind of in my head, or hey, Efren, or "Hey, Kelly, this video is for you right now." And so I'm not talking to all of you that have come today, although thank you. And if you're watching the replay, thank you. Do say hi in the comments. But this is really, just immediate connection, right? Like, whew, have you ever had this happen? Like, this just happened to me, right? And get into it. And this way, it's kind of like I've picked up the phone and called my friend and just dove right into it. And it creates more of a connection than when somebody feels like content is mass created. And so creating content for that one person that's watching, I think, is really, really important. Marie Forleo is someone who I think does this. There's a lot of content creators that I think do this really well, but she's one that I have followed for a long time now, that I think she connects in such a great way to her audience. And, again, if I'm thinking about who her audience is, in general, I think she appeals to men and women, but I do think her primary audience that she speaks to is ambitious, heart-driven women building businesses, but not just building a business. It's about building that life that they love. And they're stuck and they're overwhelmed. And I think she speaks mostly to people who are just starting a business versus, somebody who's had an established business for a period of time. But if you've ever watched any of her Marie TV, or you've been on her email list, even her book, her latest book, Everything's Figure Outable, it really feels like you're having a coffee with her. She does a really good job of creating that connection. And she'll never say, "Hey, everyone, hey, entrepreneurs," right? It's always, diving in. Like, if you've ever doubted yourself or felt like you're behind or questioned yourself, this is for you, that kind of thing. Okay. Number 4, build a real community and do this one comment at a time. And I want to tell you, if you've read my book, Self Promote and Succeed, you've heard this story, but it is still one of my favorite stories. And I heard it almost 20 years ago. And I play it in my head, when I go in, when I go in front of an audience that only has 4 people in it. And that has happened as a speaker. That's happened to me several times at events where, the room has space for 80 people and there's 5 people that come to that, especially when there's a whole bunch of breakout sessions, all the talks are being recorded, you're on the last day, all of these things can play against you as a speaker from time to time. And so, this story always plays in my head at those moments, but even on any podcast interview and all those things. So imagine that you are a singer and you're starting to get popular. Now, you're not famous yet, you're not a household name, but people are starting to know about you. You're getting noticed, and you get engaged to do this talk at this large event. There's going to be 500 people there. You're excited. You've got some new material, and then a snowstorm hits, and only 10 people show up out of the 500 you were expecting. Now, stories like this have happened before, and sometimes the bands go on stage and they half-heartedly do it. They only do half their set. Some of them will just say, "No, I'm not doing it. This isn't what I was contracted to do." But this singer said to the audience, "Well, hey, I'm disappointed there's so few of you, but to those of you who made it, I thank you for coming. And I've got a new song I want to play for you." And he proceeded to belt out this song like he was on a stage in a stadium. And the song was "What's New, Pussycat?" And of course, the singer was Tom Jones. And Jim Randall, who is a commercial real estate investor and author, and I had interviewed him on for not a podcast that I had at the time, but it was a group community that I had, and I was interviewing him for that. He told this story, and I have remembered it ever since. And he's told that story hundreds of thousands of times. And so imagine, you're in front of an audience of 10 when you expect there to be 500, and just channel your inner Tom Jones and give it your all, right? Imagine instead that it's a stadium packed. because it's not about the size of the audience. I think it's about showing up fully for whoever's listening and being grateful for each person that is there. And again, whether it's 3 people who comment or 300, especially in the early days, but I try to live by this all the time, is reply to every comment. And I think that that's how you build a real brand. And especially in this AI age, again, is knowing that you're connecting with the human, not somebody else or a robot or some other bot of some kind. I think that it's really, really important for that connection and that brand piece. So, all right, number 5, we're rounding it out. We'll do Q&A at the end after this, but is I think part of being human is evolving, right? I think that this is one of our opportunities. This is one of our gifts, is that we get to evolve as a human. And I don't think you're competing with AI. I think you're standing out because you're not AI. And because of that, you now can adapt, and you can do more things, because if you're using AI tools, you now have the power to do a lot more faster than you used to. And you can learn, what content are you creating that is connecting? What are the messages that are resonating with people? And then adapt and evolve and be ready to do that while staying true to your core message, staying true to who you are. Because I don't think your author brand is your logo or your tagline. I think it's really how people feel when they are engaged in your content, in your community, or whatever it is. Now, all that's to say, I do think taglines or little things actually help you be remembered. I had a funny thing happen at NSA, the National Speakers Association, when I was there at Influence, and I was in the elevator, and one of the people in the elevator goes to me, "Oh, Julie," or no, she didn't say my name. She said, "Oh, this elevator is for you." So my little tagline, or whatever you want to call that thing, is memorable. And so I immediately knew she knew me from YouTube. And actually, we ended up sitting beside each other later on by just how life throws people together. But I think in the age of AI, the most powerful thing that you can be is a human, and a human who shows up and serves and creates connection. So, ultimately, I think your brand is going to be built by consistently posting, responding to comments, connecting with others, and adapting and evolving while staying true to who you are. So that's ultimately, I think, how you're going to, again, you're not competing with AI, but the advantage that you have is that you're human, and other humans always want connection. And I think they're going to want more connection in the coming years than they have ever wanted before. Because everybody will look at something and go, is that the real person, or is that a bot? All right. And Efren just gave us a great line: assess, adapt, and overcome. I love it. All right. I've got time for Q&A, friends. So let's see. I did have a question here. So Jay, I don't know if it's Jay Gamer. We'll go with that. How many of you authors use direct sales instead of just Amazon and Ingram Spark? I would change the question a little bit to be, how many of you are using direct sales, period, not instead of. I don't think very many authors are using it instead of, right? Because even, we'll just go with the Alex Hormozi example because it's so epic. He launched his $100 million models book, and it was all direct. But I believe, and I haven't looked actually because I was away this week, but then he launches it through all the other normal platforms, right? Because all his other books end up, as much as he sold, a ton of books direct, he also has sold a ton of books through the normal channels. So, I think most authors are not doing either or. They're not doing direct or, they're doing direct and. All right. Just scrolling through the comments to see what else, if there's been any other questions that have come up. Kelly says, I make starting a business less scary, more doable, and a whole lot more fun. Cool. I like that. That's a good one. And Bill says, I help first-timer CEOs lead with confidence by eliminating blind spots. Ooh, that's a good one. First-timer CEOs. Living is worth dying for. That's a great one. Kelly also says, I turn overwhelmed dreamers into confident entrepreneurs with humor, clarity, and step-by-step action. Timothy, a nonlinear autobiography of a journal of a Christian, from a simple saving grace to knowledge that goes beyond the pulpit in general. It's great. And then Joy says, I help classroom teachers to connect with each student through being curious when a student struggles, and as what am I missing? There we go. So I help classroom teachers to connect with each student through being curious when a student struggles. Got it. And then ask, what am I missing? Probably there's probably a K missing. That's why I stumbled on this. Okay. Usually write true children's books about pets and outdoors. That's fun. Cool. All right. I'm just scrolling down, catching up on what you guys have been talking about. That 70s show did a takeoff from that, where Tom Jones was supposed to show up for a record singing, only he didn't show up because of a snowstorm. I didn't know that. That's great. All the algorithms have changed, and keywords in Amazon have ghost categories. Yes, you have to use a publisher rocket to find true categories. That is absolutely true. Yes. It's funny though, when you do research in Publisher Rocket, it'll give you ghost categories, and then you see on there that they're ghost categories. I'm like, why are we even seeing these on here? But yes, you do have to watch out for ghost categories. And for those of you who don't know what it is, it's basically a category that is there, but it doesn't have any stuff in it. Like, it doesn't have any books. So if you click on it, that category technically doesn't really exist. So you don't want those. All right, let's see. You guys are having good old conversation here. I'm going to have my own webpage and a budget to sponsor ads on Instagram and Facebook. Okay, great. I don't see any other questions. So let's see. Kevin Hall, I learned a bit of Fortran during my college days. All right. Okay, so I don't see any questions. We're going to do our normal live with prizes. Will be happening, I guess, Angela and Sarah, when they did the Tuesday with on how to start your podcast. They didn't do it, so we'll get the normal live prizes on Tuesday, and then we'll return to whatever will be our new normal schedule come September. All right, you guys are having a good old conversation, so you guys can carry on this conversation over at school. We have our booklaunchers.com/schools, SKOOL, because I don't want to end the conversation, but it looks like you guys don't need me. Which is a-okay. So I'm just dropping that in there. Some of you are already in our free community, but if you're not, you can go ahead and join right there and carry on this lovely conversation with each other. So, all right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And I hope to see you Tuesday when we're talking about how SEO has changed. So speaking of those keywords, Kevin, it's okay. I am thrilled that you guys are connecting, because again, that is one of the things that I think makes a community great, and is also part of our brand here at Book Launchers and my own brand. So I am thrilled that you guys are connecting. But I do want you to carry on over at our free community, because I'm going to end the stream now and hope to see you guys around soon. All right, bye.